Sometimes, I'll say the majority of the times it's cash, but a lot of times it's for prestige or they think that they're accomplishing something doing that. But a lot of times the main reason would be cash.
This week's show is about a topic we've heard far too much about lately, and that is violence. I'm Alex.
And my name's Christina, and you've just tuned in to Clear World. First, we ask why people commit violent acts. And then we ask, are there any circumstances where violence is appropriate?
And next, we asked people if they thought human beings were born violent or taught violence. Okay, so let's see what they had to say. Why do people commit violent acts?
I think maybe it's anger, frustration, stress, being caught up, not knowing where their direction in life is, and just being a part of the world.
Have you ever experienced a violent crime?
A violent crime, I don't know how you would specify violent crime. I've been attacked. I'm a photographer. I was at a concert, and I was attacked by a security guard. And at this point, no one seems to want to deal with the situation, but to me, that was a violent act, so, yeah.
From the household, you know, you gotta take responsibility at home. You don't show your kids, you don't bring them up right. You know.
Have you ever experienced a violent crime?
Not necessarily, no.
Witnessed one?
Oh, yeah. Murder.
What happened?
Somebody was shot.
Why?
At just a store robbery.
Why do people commit violent acts?
Well, some commit it for attention and some commit it because they know no better, I guess.
Have you ever experienced a violent crime?
Well, I've seen many, but I haven't been the victim of one, but I've seen a lot of violent crime.
Like what?
Like people shot, stabbed, robbed, so on.
And usually, why does that occur?
Well, it depends. It could be robbed. People get robbed for money. People get killed for money. Could be a lot of reasons.
Why do people commit violent acts?
I think it's due to some of their history in their past, sometimes coming from different households and how they're brought up and where they live and that type of thing.
Have you ever experienced a violent crime?
Personally, I haven't. I've worked with runaway kids up here in New York City for 2 years, so only through them, not personally though.
Why do people commit violent acts?
Why? People commit violent acts because sometimes that's their lifestyle, you know?
Have you ever experienced violent crime?
You mean personally? If I ever experienced it personally, I did it personally? Yeah, I experienced it, but not personally. I never did it personally.
How did you experience it?
But I stepped out my front door one day and saw somebody got shot like 20 times. Yeah.
Are there any circumstances where violence is appropriate?
I don't think so.
Do you think human beings are taught or born violent? Is it taught violence or they're born violent?
I think that they're taught. I mean, I'm sure there's in some instances where somebody's born violent, but I really think it's more taught in the home. I mean, if parents are doing drugs and acting violent with each other, that's all they see.
Do you think violent action is a result of biology, emotion, or mentality?
I think emotion and mentality. I mean, you get so mad, so angry, you go out and commit a crime. And mentality, I mean, you know, if somebody has that violent mentality, yeah, they're going to go out and commit a crime.
Are there any circumstances when violence is appropriate?
Yeah, sure. When you're protecting yourself, someone's trying to rob you, or like in my case, someone was trying to take my camera from me. Yeah, sure. You know.
Are human beings born violent or taught violence?
Some can be born. I mean, I think everyone's a spirit, you know, and sometimes you just come back as if that spirit was bad, then, you know, that person who has it is going to be bad. You can be taught as well, depending on, you know, if you're in a gang-related type family or where you with people that, you know, do stealing or whatever, sure, you know, so I guess both of them are okay.
Do you think violent action is a result of biology, emotion, or mentality?
Emotions. I guess it could be all three, really. I think emotionally, though, it happens because, once again, frustration, stress, maybe coming from a dysfunctional background or whatever. It's everything, shit. You know, I think it's within the person themselves. It's a self thing. If you don't deal with self, then you're never going to be able to deal with the negativity that approaches you. You know, once you deal with self, you'll know how to run positive because, you know, you're not going to steal from yourself. You're not going to lie to yourself, you know. So once you deal with your conscience within you, I think the rest, you know, come out for itself.
Are there any circumstances when violence is appropriate?
I would have to say no, but probably personally, if I was in a certain circumstance, you know, if I felt like I was violated, then I would probably take some kind of action myself.
Are human beings born violent or taught violence?
I think it's something they learn. I don't think they're inborn with it, to be honest with you.
Do you think violent action is a result of biology, emotions, or mentality?
I would say probably emotions.
Well, why? If two people feel the same way, why would one be violent as a result of their emotions and the other not?
I think they might just get caught up in everything, the situation, and whether I know I just said before that I don't think they're born with those characteristics, but I think that if they don't have any other learned behavior, how to act them out in a decent way, I guess they take to violent acts.
Are there any circumstances when violence is appropriate?
Sure, when it's if someone is violent to you, you have every right to be violent back to them. You know.
Are human beings born violent or taught violence?
It's definitely taught. You know, if we're all born innocent, I believe, and you know, as you get older, you're persuaded, or you know, whatever things influence your life. That's how the way you behave. You know, but you're not born like that. No way.
Do you think violent action is a result of biology, emotions, or mentality?
Well, it's a matter of controlling emotions and mentality. I believe that I believe it all comes from home. You know, it's what your parents let you get away with. You know, and you fear what you can get away with. That's why a lot of people are violent, I believe.
Are there any circumstances when violence is appropriate?
War.
Why?
If it's justified through masses of people, you go with the vote. No?
Do you think human beings are born violent or taught violence?
50-50. Some are born with it and some learn it along the road.
So do you think violent action is a result of biology, emotions, or mentality?
I think it's biology and upbringing, you know, surroundings.
Do you think people are born violent or taught violence?
I guess they pick it up on the street.
What are the advantages to violence?
I don't think there's no advantage to violence. You see, I'm violent, but I'm really not for violence because I'm for peace, you know what I'm saying? But sometimes violence is necessary, but there's no advantages to violence, only like death and destruction. You know?
What are the advantages to violence?
Normally, only advantage I can think of is that you have an example to look back at and you can probably learn from it, hopefully.
And the disadvantages?
Disadvantages, a lot of times, it's a lot of innocent people who die.
And what is the solution to violence?
Like I said before, I believe the only solution to violence is education, talking things out, looking back and learning from our past mistakes, you know, so we don't have to go through the same mistakes over and over, because it seems like for some reason we're just going through the same things that we've been through time and time again and still not learning.
Most people agree that violence is taught to us. Although it's true, we are all born with a streak of barbarism, we don't have to succumb to it, because we're also capable of reason. And that is, as a society, is what we should be promoting. Not who's the roughest and toughest and they're the best. Because that perspective is what's bringing the violence down upon us.
One of the greatest disadvantages to violence is that we live and walk in fear. I can't really think of any of the advantages. Although I do like to look for a silver lining behind dark clouds. We did meet one person who is truly inspired by war, or rather, warrior costumes. This next segment that we're going to roll is a piece about Michael Saint, a designer inspired by the costumes of Japanese warriors.
And after that, we questioned people about the rising crime rates associated with children and women. Okay, so let's see what they had to say.
I got involved originally with leatherwork, and I got a taste of it back in Boy Scout camp, and it's been a hobby that's kind of been something I've been interested in off and on. This is part of the samurai armor that I'm working on. This is patterned after some 16th century samurai helmet, and this piece right here is a full faceplate, which was separate from the helmet itself, and then right here you've got the actual samurai armor. With articulations coming along here in the back. This piece right here was actually used for the samurai to put an insignia on back here. They would tend to dress very much alike, so they'd have some sort of piece that they would dangle off here so that their enemies and their comrades would be able to recognize them. Then we have the turn-back ear flaps here, which are something very unique to the samurai armor. Here is an emblem. The helmets were all pretty much done the same no matter who the warrior was. The only thing that was distinctive usually was this emblem right here. And then I've added a little touch myself. I've been studying kanji lately, and then I've inscribed the characters for fire, water, air, earth, and void here. And I've inscribed this character, which is dew, which is Japanese for great. This is my first show, and I'm happy to say it's also a solo show here, too, which is kind of nice. This is a full suit of gilded armor. It's my showpiece at this point in time. It's based on jousting armor from the 16th century. I've taken a few liberties in design, but the shoulders and the arms are very accurate. This was a knight that as long as he wore his green armor, nobody could actually injure him. And there's a story about, I believe, Lancelot trading blows with the Green Knight. Lancelot wasn't able to cut his head off. The Green Knight gave Lancelot a little scratch along his neck because Lancelot accepted a kiss from the Green Knight's wife one evening. I hope that enough people show up tonight that they're going to be happy with it also. But I must say that I've been very happy, and we've prepared as much as we possibly can for this.
I guess maybe feeling like Wonder Woman, it sort of feels like a comic book come to life, only Wonder Woman never wore black leather.
Why are more kids committing violent crime now than ever before?
Having worked with them a great deal, I would say again, they're looking for like something that had been missing in their life, whether it be love or parents, and they, for example, go into gang groups and that type of thing, looking for this power and this somebody else to take their place of whether it's a parent or some mentor, that type of thing. So they look to either drugs or violence or that type of.
Do you think American culture has anything to do with this phenomenon?
It's hard. I tend to agree with that, having been over in Europe for a while. You don't see too much of that, on the streets, or I would tend to say, yeah, it has to do with a lot with our culture.
In what way and how? How does it domesticate that?
I think their way of life over there, and as far as how they're, again, the children starting at an early age, how they're brought up, what they learn from their parents and their society, even the physical body, how they, as far as nudity over there is taking a whole different outlook than how it is over here, and I think just more accepting. People don't look at it as you know, something sexual like that as an art. And over here it tends to reflect, I think, violence, you know, and other things. So.
If girls were brought up the same way as boys, do you think they would be as violent as boys?
I really don't think it has any bearing.
Well, who do you think is more violent, women or men?
I would tend to say men, but I wouldn't know how to answer that truthfully. I think on the rise, there's probably a lot more women, as far as, because I've had my parents work in the prison system. And for extra activities, and women, as far as the ratio, it's increasing every year as far as violent acts. I think it might be also coming from, sometimes there's a lot of single mothers and who are, for example, raising their children, and they do, you know, they commit crimes to maybe support their family, or they don't have anybody else to look to, they don't have another partner to rely upon. They're, you know, they feel lonely and deserted and kind of cast out, so they have to kind of fend for themselves.
Who is more violent, women or men?
I think it could be either or. I think it's just more accepted that men are violent, but it's a lot of women who think just like men. Maybe men are just more braver to carry out and actually do it, but I think it's about equal. Just more men probably do it.
So more men are violent than women. Why do you think that is?
I don't know, because I guess the world itself is always believed to be a man's world, so therefore he gets the most blame.
Well, it's true that men are more violent. 96% of violent crimes are committed by men.
I can believe it. But I believe women are just as capable of committing the same amount.
Why are more kids committing violent crime now than ever before?
Like I said before, a lot of kids are committing crime because their parents, not to blame it all on the parents though, but the parents are not as strong as they used to be. Kids get to watch what they want, get to hang out what they want. The movies are not what they used to be. You got cable now, you know, with all kind of stuff on the air that they can watch and get bad influence from.
So do you think American culture has something to do with the violence phenomenon?
Well, I believe it plays a role, but it's probably a combination of a lot of things.
If girls were brought up the same way as boys, brought up by their families and influenced by society the same way boys are, do you think they'd be as violent as boys?
That's a hard question. I don't really think so for some reason. I believe in women's nature is not to be truly violent, but I believe if they're taught up to be violent, they will be violent. It's just the chances will be less that they would be violent.
Why do you think violent crime committed by females is on the rise?
Well, women want to get their due, too. They want to be equal in all ways, I guess.
Who's more violent, women or men?
Women. I think, man, it would tend to be that way.
Why?
Statistics, I'd imagine.
Why do you think men are more violent?
Stronger.
Yeah, the need to show off strength or something.
Why are more kids committing violent acts more than ever before?
Because parents don't give a shit where they are. It comes down to the parents, I think. Right now.
What should parents do?
Pay attention where your kid is up to the time he's 15 years old or so. Because like now where we live in Lauderdale, it's getting a lot of 10 to 15 committing crimes, and it's like, why are they even out at 11 o'clock?
Do you think American culture has anything to do with this phenomenon?
God, gun, and guts. So that's a motto, so yeah.
If girls were brought up the same way as boys, do you think they'd be as violent?
I believe so. It would tend to be that way. Some of the girls I know that were raised by a single male household, they'll fight you quicker than the guy would.
Why do you think violent crime committed by females is on the rise?
Anything? Just they want to claim their space, I guess.
Why do you think violent crime committed by females is on the rise?
because they're frustrated. A lot of people are frustrated right now. You know, they can't do what they want to do. That we're all being stereotyped. You know, all this racism shit. It's just people are just tired now, and they're just going for self now. Everyone is going to self-help programs. People are just going out. I mean, look how many parents are single and solo, and it's no big problem now. A lot of women are starting to get off this welfare and realize, yo, I can do something. I can be me. I don't have to rely on a man. I don't have to rely on the government. If I'm strong and positive and thank my higher power, whoever that may be, and let them guide you, you will be okay.
It's understandable that women feel a need to be tough to survive in the world, to compete with men, and to gain some sort of equality. But we have to be careful not to make the same mistakes that men have made. The world does not need tough women. It needs nurturing men.
And obviously, the children need more caring and inspiration. In this next section, we ask people to tell us what's the best, most effective way to deal with violent crime. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
What is the solution to violent crime?
I just think that there needs to be more drug programs. I think that there needs to be more community services and things like that for kids. I really think that people should focus on kids because right now, I mean, the way I feel about it, a lot of adults can't be helped, but I think that kids, they're the ones that are right now committing so much violence that, you know, if you start focusing on kids, things could change.
What is the difference between those who engage in wars with other countries and those who engage in wars with other street gangs?
Well, street gangs are stupid. War, you're talking for the masses. Street gangs, you're talking a few small people. Now, if they were smart, they would get together.
Doesn't that sound a lot like how countries should act too?
Of course, but it's never going to be that way.
So what's the main difference between the two besides numbers?
Don't see no difference really when it comes down to it.
What is the difference between those who engage in wars with other countries and those who engage in wars with other street gangs?
Well, the difference is wars with other countries usually started by people on the top who don't actually fight in them. But wars with other gangs, a lot of times you're right there, you know, you're right there fighting for your life.
As far as why they fight, what is there a difference between those two groups?
Well, I guess it's politics, but it's no difference. It usually do be for stupid reasons.
And what is the solution to violence?
What is the solution? I just think, I don't know if there really is one solution, you know, as far as like capital punishment, for example. I don't know what, you know, how I agree with on that. You know, again, if I was violated again, you know, or I probably wouldn't want to see the person put away. But I just think it all depends on like education and communicating and working together and develop, I don't know, there's just so many different programs and there's people, you know, need to stop putting off on other people and then start, you know, working together and cooperating and trying to find some solutions. And personally, I don't know what kind of solutions they would be, but again, I think having worked with teenagers, it starts really young because they're very dissuasive, you know, or persuaded, I should say, and how their acts are and how they think, that type of thing.
What's the difference between those who engage in wars with other countries and those who engage in wars with other street gangs?
It's no difference really. It's sort of the same principle, you know. Street gangs fight because of turf. Countries fight because of turf, you know. Or they might, you know, like, for example, like war in the Middle East, you know, they want to fight because it's all over oil and money and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
What is the solution to violence?
Like I said before, I believe the only solution to violence is education, talking things out, looking back and learning from our past mistakes, you know, so we don't have to go through the same mistakes over and over, because it seems like for some reason we're just going through the same things that we've been through time and time again and still not learning.
What is the solution to violent crime?
I already told you, equality.
Okay. And what is the best punishment for violent crime? What do you think is the most effective punishment?
there's no punishment for violent crime, because if somebody commits a violent crime, say like 7 out of 10 people, you put them in jail and they come back out on the street, they're going to do the same thing because they become institutionalized in jail. So, you know, they get accustomed to living in jail. So when they come out here, they don't know how to be on the street, so they'll do another crime and go back home to jail because they feel comfortable there.
And they usually end up in the same place where they came from, and there's no alternative but what they did to begin with anyway.
If you go to jail for 10 years, you get comfortable. You're in jail for 10 years, you're comfortable.
Yeah. Well, then what should be the punishment instead of jail? Do you believe in physical punishment in some way, or you know, the death penalty?
The death penalty is also part of violence, so I don't believe in death penalty, but the solution to the problem is, you know, like I said, you know, oppression got a lot to do with it, you know what I'm saying? And unless oppression stops and equality takes over, then there's gonna always be violence.
Because violent crime seems so out of control lately, people are more open to severe punishment. I think if there was legislation for hanging again, I think people might even go for that. But, and it might work for a couple of perpetrators, and it might work temporarily, but it's not the reason people commit crimes. They don't commit crime because they won't get in trouble. They commit crimes because of a feeling of purposelessness, of frustration, anger, lack of opportunity. You know, so what we need to do is look at the people who are committing violent crime, find out why they committed the crimes, and there we will find the answer to prevent the crimes.
And I think a lot of crime originates, at least with these younger children, out of, well, they want attention. They want to attract attention. You know, anger, frustration can definitely be channeled into positive, you know, positive areas. I mean, these kids want to do something. They want to, they're just proving that they're good at something. They want people to look at them and notice them. And that's all you have to do is give the kids the opportunity. I strongly believe that. Well, that's our television show for this week, Clear World. We invite you, as always, to call us with your comments.
Right. Our number is 260-1602.
And we'll see you next week.
Right.
Like, I'm the only white person on my block, and it took me a while before I realized that I have two sisters that are adopted that are both black, but it took me a long time to realize that my block was totally safe. Like, I was okay there, and it was an okay situation, and that, you know, my neighbors are really fun, and etc.
And how did you come to that realization?
Well, I feel pretty committed to confronting that fear that we were talking about before. And so if something comes up, like if I'm walking by something and I feel nervous or I feel afraid or I make a judgment about who somebody is, often as not, I'll ask myself, well, gee, what is that judgment, or where is that coming from, or like I have a commitment to pushing myself about that.
This man, like all of us, is curious by nature and has an innate fear of the unknown, which can develop into feelings of prejudice. Fortunately, he is confronting his fears. And that brings us to the subject of this week's show. My name is Christina.
And I'm Alex, and we wanted to find out about prejudice, how people learn it, why people accept it, and how it affects all of us. First, we asked people to define two words, prejudice and race. Okay, so let's see what they have to say.
What does the word race mean to you? Personally, I don't believe in the word race, because you look up the dictionary, it means a competition with athletes, not someone's skin color. It's usually ethnic group, not race.
What's the difference between race and ethnicity?
Race and ethnicity, okay, I think race was used as a way of just sort of discriminating against people. That's where you get the word racism from. Ethnicity is like, personally, someone's ethnic group, background, or family history.
Well, do you think the word race alludes to biology or culture or something else?
Actually, I think it's a combination of the two, because all my life I was tormented because genetically I'm not inclined to look like a black person, but internally I feel as though I'm definitely a lot closer to the black race than a lot of darker skinned people. So I think it's a combination of both, the way you're conditioned and raised, and if you just happen to be genetically that way.
What is prejudice?
Oh man, I know prejudice. It's when somebody's going to start with me because I got long hair, or because I'm black, or because I'm a woman, I can't get a job. It's pretty bad.
It's hatred on the street. It's getting bad around here.
What does the word race mean to you?
Well, the idea of one race, it, I don't know, it gets down to a basic human element. When it gets into many races, I'm not quite sure what that is for me.
Prejudice is ignorance, that's what I think it is. And we get it all the time. I do, because my son is, well, look at him. He's mixed. My husband is Caucasian, and I'm black and mixed. So it's something I have to deal with every day.
I think prejudice is also ignorance, and when people just discriminate against someone just based on their color of their ethnicity.
Do you think there are many races or only one race?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer. I think there are many races, but for me personally, I think we're just all one people. It doesn't really bother me.
What does the word race mean to you?
Race. Race would be who are you, your ethnic background, where you're from, not necessarily your color, but your cultural background. That's what I think it is.
Okay, so you say there's no such thing as race. Can you describe what the word race means to you, if anything?
Race is the doctrine and belief that man is divided into various groups by physical characteristics. These particular characteristics can be everything from skin color to bone structure to whatever, but it's all physical. And that certain groups of people, because of their physical structure and their physical background and their so-called evolution, derive a certain kind of intellect or social institutions from that thing. So therefore, certain people are better than others because of their physical characteristics.
You mean external physical characteristics?
Well, you can also have internal things, or genes, supposedly. That's another usage. Racism does have some people who try to use genes to affect it, when in fact genetics actually proves that there is no such thing as race in the first place, since every human being has the same set of genes.
What we just heard makes a lot of sense. There are not many different races. There are people who speak different languages, people who come from different parts of the world. What there really is a human community of which the members have both basic needs and basic internal physicality in common.
That's true. We chose now a comedy sketch that we thought you'd enjoy, that the topic is prejudice. And then after that, we're going to speak to some people on the street, and we're going to ask them about the advantages and disadvantages to being prejudiced, as well as if they thought that they were born with prejudice or it's something that they're taught. So we'll roll the comedy sketch first and then take a look at what people had to say on the street.
I, Master Lee, will set these boards on fire, break them with my hand. Ha! 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 But first, I think I'd like to talk about my childhood. I spent the first 9 months of my life inside my mother's stomach. It was the longest relationship I ever had with a woman. Then, for no reason at all, she threw me out and had the tip of my penis cut off. I remember thinking, some birthday. In the nursery, there was a little baby next to me. I waved to him. And he went. It wasn't easy growing up Chinese, especially for a black kid like me. Okay, I'm only half black. A quarter black. All right, I'm not black, but I am beautiful. Growing up, my hero was Bruce Lee. But then in the 70s, there weren't that many Asian role models. There was only Bruce Lee and the guy in the Chinese laundry commercial. Ancient Chinese secret. Huh. To get my brown belt, I had to do the amazing. To get my black belt, I had to do the impossible. To get into this crummy little film, I had to do the producer.
What are the advantages to being prejudiced, if any?
Well, it depends on what group you are in. I mean, if you're in a group being prejudiced against a minority group, the advantage is that you can use the public's prejudice to your side, make sure you get all the benefits and the money from society when the other minority groups can't get anything.
And what are the disadvantages to prejudice?
Disadvantages, the small groups suffer. I mean, minorities these days are usually majority, but based on the fact that the balance of society is still on the white side, that most of the minority groups still suffer, even though they're larger than the white groups.
And when you say white, you mean?
I mean, Caucasians, non-Asian, non-Puerto Rican, non-Hispanic.
Do you think people are born prejudiced, or is it taught to us?
It's taught to you. It's definitely taught. I mean, because you're born with no knowledge whatsoever, but your parents and your friends and relatives instill their values in you, and that's how you get a prejudiced person.
Do you think there are many races or only one race?
Yeah, humans. That's our race. We're humans.
We're all children of God. That's our race.
Really?
Do you think people are born prejudiced, or it's taught to them?
I think it's taught to them, definitely. Yeah. It's a learned thing. I don't think you create it. I think you learn it.
Do you think people are born prejudiced, or it's taught to them?
It's absolutely taught.
Do you think people are born prejudiced, or is it taught to us?
I don't think people are born prejudiced, but people are born with... I think people can carry these things into the world, these traits that will grow into prejudice.
What trait?
That kind of confusion that's about fear of the unknown, those questions. I think that goes back to, I think it starts innocently. I think they're just questions. But
Do you think most people have the same basic needs or different needs?
Same basic needs. It's only that when we allow this materialistic world to intrude in our lives that we become brainwashed in what we need. But essentially, we all have the same basic needs.
I think everyone has the same needs.
Could you list some of them?
To be accepted, to be believed in, to be loved, to survive in the world.
And what are the disadvantages to being prejudiced?
The disadvantages? Oh, you miss out on a lot. You miss out on getting to know people of different cultures, because that is so much fun when you can mix. I think you miss out on a lot.
For me, I think there's nothing more fascinating than another being, another culture, another individual, a different environment, a change of pace from one city to the other, from one country to the other, from one household to the other. It's fascinating.
Have you ever experienced negative or biased feelings about people who look or seem different from you?
Yeah, sure.
Example?
Well, put it this way, I'll see certain taxi guys won't pick up a black guy, but there'll be a black guy on the other corner, and he'll be before me, and I'll get the taxi first. And when I get in, I'll say, why didn't you pick him up? He says he could rob me. You know, that's pretty sad.
But have you personally felt any biased feeling toward people who look different from you?
I don't care what you are. I don't care if you're purple.
Nah. I get harassed enough, you know. I know what other people go through because I go through it myself, you know.
When you see people who look different from you, do you think that they also think differently from you?
It depends on what you're thinking, you know. I mean, they all got to eat, breathe, you know, go to the bathroom, sleep. We're all basically the same. They might think a little differently, you know. They might be thinking about how they can make money. They might be thinking about, you know, how they can climb their ladder of status, whatnot. You know, I don't know. I don't think people think too differently. We all got to survive, you know.
So there are some of the disadvantages of prejudice. As you can see, there doesn't seem to be any advantages. Next, we spoke with people about their personal experiences with prejudice and if they thought there was a solution to this phenomenon of bigotry and prejudice.
And that phenomenon is on the rise, so much so that approximately 5 or 6 years ago, there was a need to create a bias unit in New York City to deal with that phenomenon. We also wanted to see if there were any agencies that were doing anything toward the solution of eliminating prejudice. And we spoke to two gentlemen from the American Civil Liberties Union, Galen Kirkland and Norman Siegel, and wanted to find out what they had to say. So let's take a look at what everyone had to say.
Have you experienced prejudice?
I would say maybe once or twice. It was, I was looking for a job, and I went to the store, and it was run by a certain, I'm not going to say what group, but a certain group, and when I walked in, before I could even say a word, he just told me no, and slammed the door in my face.
And you think it's because?
Well, I mean, he had no idea why I was coming into the store. I could have been a customer. He had no idea I was looking for a job, and the fact that he just said no, slammed in my face and just turned away, but automatically told me he just didn't even want to bother with me.
Do you think there's a solution to prejudice?
No, I really don't think so. Well, the only solution there is to kill everyone off the earth and just start from scratch. Because prejudice is already taught and it's sort of brought down, but I mean, you can try and change people's minds, but those who don't want to believe it won't believe it. I mean, you can take a bigot and you can educate them and show them why they're wrong, but if they don't want to believe it, they won't accept information.
Have you ever experienced negative or biased feelings about people who look or seem different from you?
Personal, maybe, yeah. But I've never let it affect my decision on whether that person is a good person or not. I've realized that was wrong by saying that, but I mean, I never really let it affect my decision or my reflection upon that person.
Where do you think those feelings came from?
Instilled from the society for what you're taught when you're small. I mean, when your parents tell you things, you believe them because they're your parents, and you may not show it, but it's in the back of your head, it's always there. That's why I believe everyone is prejudiced, at least 5% or 10%. Whether they show it or not is up to them.
Have you ever experienced prejudice?
Oh, yeah.
How?
Yeah. People, you know, I live right across from a high school, and there's kids that look at me like they want to kill me just because I'm white.
Yeah, I go through
You know?
it because I got the long hair. I mean, I'll go walking down the street, and there'll be an old lady walking down the street, and she'll step on the other side because I'm coming by. You know, I'm not going to hurt her, but she doesn't know that. She thinks I'm going to hurt her. God only knows why. How horribly.
Is there a solution to prejudice?
I don't know.
If people stop teaching it, I think there could be.
Yeah, it would take a while. It would take a long time.
Their kids.
That's what it would be.
Have you ever stereotyped anyone?
No, I haven't.
I try not to.
Has it ever you felt feelings like that?
My feelings, I have had feelings. I shouldn't say no, because there are some people who have, the Israelites, that's my thing. They're different. I don't understand where they're coming from. It's so much, to me, it's so much hate coming from them. And then, so I'm probably a little bit, you know, against it. I don't understand them. I feel sorry for them.
So did that come from a personal experience?
Yes, it did. They don't like my son because my son has blue eyes and he has blonde hair and he's the devil's child. This is how they talk about it. I don't know if you know much about the Israelites, but they were really, they were harsh on me.
And do you think that's religiously based or culturally?
I have no idea. I don't really know much about them. I don't know.
I think that people, I don't judge people because of their race or anything, because you can't, I don't do it personally because different people, I might not like you, not because you're white, not because you're black. I might not like some black people and I'm black. I might not like some white people, but that's just their personality that I don't like. It's not that I don't like that color. Anyone can be my friend. It's not because of their color. It's because of their personality that I wouldn't like them.
Yeah.
Why do you think there is prejudice?
Well, we have a real tradition that is an outgrowth of history. African Americans were brought here as slaves. Other people of color have been discriminated against in this country for hundreds of years. And we have not, as a culture, been successful in confronting directly what it is that leads people to hate and what's required to reorient everybody to respect the human rights of other people fully.
The Sunday after Yusuf Hawkins was killed, he was killed on a Wednesday night in August of 1989. There was a multiracial march through Bensonhurst, and when we were marching, there were hundreds of people on the sidewalk who were screaming at African Americans, "Niggers, go home," screaming at Caucasians, "Nigger lovers, go home." People were spitting at us. They were carrying watermelons, and it was a horrible experience. And based on that experience, I felt that we had to go back to that neighborhood and try to confront the young people who were displaying such bigotry. And so that's the genesis of the idea for the class.
We talked, the students themselves describe how their parents and relatives condition them to think in certain ways, an us against them type of mentality, a buying into the racial stereotypes that pervade the society. And as a matter of fact, we spend time every term re-examining what those stereotypes are and how they work, so that folks can get a better sense of the influences that they're being subjected to, even though they might not be very conscious of it. So it permeates all of the media around us, the way in which people make assumptions about who another person is because of their race or their ethnicity or religion or sexual orientation. And that is the type of thing that has to be exploded and gotten away with. You know, to get away from that and begin to allow people to see each person as an individual. That's what's needed.
I always thought that one of the things that Galen and I and the other people from the Civil Rights Coalition who are teaching in the 37 high schools in the city right now were doing, we were kind of a catalytic agent. What we were doing was going in and kicking some people in the rear end to get them off their rear end and start developing specific programs along race relations and in teaching tolerance. It's long overdue. There's lots of money that's being spent to study the issue and to try to develop programs to deal with race relations. What I've always said, there's nothing genius about what we're doing. The only thing that's genius is that we're doing it. And so I think that the time is long over for talking about it, and we just got to get out and make it happen. And the way that it happens is that the political leaders and the education leaders decide that they're going to open the doors to programs like civil rights and race relations.
Even if you had a parent who was the most enlightened person in the world, who was telling you every day a more humane approach to other people, we would still have to deal with what's going on around us in this culture, and that's a goal that I think really does require the involvement of leadership on all levels, political, religious, business community. Everybody has to be involved. Community leaders, you know, when you hear a racist joke or a homophobic joke, you have to reject it. You can't snicker along with it. You can't support it in your casual life and expect that all of a sudden, when somebody's moving into a neighborhood and the crowds and the mobs gathering, that you're going to be able to break them up. It has to be a daily struggle.
Do you think there's a solution?
A solution to prejudice? No, I think eventually we may grow out of it. Hopefully the upcoming generations, like my son, you know, hopefully he won't be prejudiced. He's with everyone. So hopefully the next few generations it will eventually fade out.
And how will we eliminate prejudice?
How will we eliminate it? By teaching our young ones not to be.
What should we do to eliminate prejudice?
We should make a commitment to working with ourselves and our own prejudices and trying to make try to be gentle with ourselves and to see that yes, we all have prejudices and that doesn't make us awful, and at the same time we could challenge ourselves to go beyond those prejudices.
Same, different words, I guess. I know it's said a lot, but like you really go down to respecting differences, and it's hard to do, and that's going to be constant work for everyone. But it's like really, truly working to respect differences.
Do you think we've made any progress against prejudice?
No, none. In fact, I think we're getting worse. What's happening, of course, is that we're trying to cure racial problems using the criteria of race. Again, as I said, it's like trying to cure Nazism by making everybody a Nazi. It just doesn't work. What we're doing is constantly working towards developing a tolerance for things that are not real. Why should we be tolerant of race when there is no such thing as race? You know, you shouldn't have to tolerate evils. And that's what we're doing. And again, we're doing it for political reasons, and much of it comes from the non-Marxist left as well as from the fascist right in this country.
So instead of saying the human race, you would say the human...
There are human beings.
Species?
No, there are human beings. You can say there's Homo sapiens, that all human beings are Homo sapiens, but why discuss it? I mean, human beings are human beings. What makes human beings the way they are is their common humanity. Their common humanity also provides a natural diversity. And that is what we're going to talk about. I mean, we don't need to talk about the divisions of people in biological terms. I mean, anatomy is not destiny. It's not destiny for men and women, for example. Men can no longer use the excuse that they're physically stronger than women to suppress them, for example. Why should they do that? If you are white, you have no right to suppress anybody who's black, or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, anatomy, again, is not destiny, and should not be.
So as you can see, prejudice is completely counterproductive. It wastes time, it wastes money, it wastes life. And it's so old, this problem is old, and it's ridiculous because the end of the 20th century is here. So if we don't want the same problems for another century, you know, we've got to think about what we're doing. Otherwise, we'll continue to waste our time and effort.
Definitely. This problem's so old, it's practically boring. And all I want to do is re-quote the gentleman we actually met at the Henry George School. He was giving a speech on
the myth of race.
Right. And his name is Kalev. And he basically said, anatomy is not destiny.
External anatomy.
And I have to agree with that. And, well, that's it for our show on prejudice. We invite you, as always, to call Clear World with your comments. Our telephone number is 260-1602.
And we'll see you next week.
Go for it, John.
It's a mushy thing, and it makes you feel good.
This week's show is about the second oldest unanswered question.
The second? Wait a minute, what's the first?
Well, what is the first?
I have no idea, unless you mean, what is the meaning of life?
Sure, that's got to be the oldest, but the second oldest has got to be what is love, or what is the meaning of love?
What is love? Well, that's exactly what we wanted to find out. And we hope that you will, too, because you've just tuned into Clear World. And my name is Christina.
And I'm Alex. And this show's a little different from our other shows because we don't take